the BS around Bitcoin. I mean, I've seen it firsthand. My husband was building wallets, supercomputers that were cracking digital wallets. So it was designed to start exercising people into digital currency. And I mean, honestly, I was like, we got into a military base. These kids are able to look at CCTV footage with men walking down with big guns, and they're like,
All right. Hello and welcome once again to White Lotus of Light conversational series. And I'm here with the brilliant and lovely Jennifer Arcuri. And this is one of those episodes where you can watch this second half. It will stand on its own, but I highly recommend you go back and watch part one because we give a lot of the context, especially if you're not familiar with this emergent blockchain technology, Web 3.0, and emergent financial system that's coming along. Jennifer is an expert on that, and she goes into a lot of information on that. And so just real quick, Jennifer is a tech entrepreneur with a focus on cybersecurity and financial technology. And we're just going to, we realized we didn't really tie this off in part one. We want to talk a little bit more about, and this is, I'm going to get some haters in the comments for this 100%. Jennifer and I both hold a very controversial opinion, but we're both believe in integrity, and so we're just going to stick with our opinion, even if it's not popular in this space. And so, Jennifer, do you want to talk a bit about on your opinion on Bitcoin? And you were talking about rigs and something with some of the tech that your husband has worked on in the past, and some stuff you're developing now around sovereign wallets. Did you want to launch into that a bit?
oh, thank you. I appreciate you letting me speak to this because I get a lot of slack for it, mainly because the media made up a lot of lies and told the audience, the general public of the UK, a bunch of hogwash. But as we started with the last, as you opened up, I was warmly welcomed and loved within the tech community in London, and took my work very seriously, and was very focused on building companies and attracting over investment. And that's kind of where I first landed in London, bringing in my network from California and attracting money and investments into the city that also allowed me to expand my technical abilities. And in 2015, I took I have 5 certifications in cybersecurity. So no one knows this, but I became a professional pen tester and ethical hacker. And I have a CISSP, CCNA, I have CEH, all the security things that one would need. And when I met my husband, he was, like neck deep in Bitcoin. We're not just talking, oh, I bought Bitcoin. No, my husband was the real deal. He was building this shit when it was like $6, and he was building it and where it would overheat and like cause fires in his little apartment in Putney and all this, and he was really into this, technically seeing how the mathematical equations worked with this consensus protocol, or using Bitcoin mining to generate more Bitcoin so he could understand blockchain. So he was really in this when I met him in 2016. And we kind of connected with cybersecurity and my company Hacker House at the time, that was just doing, basic pen tests and audits. And we were looking at training and bringing in, trying to find, the UK government was hell bent to arrest all the hackers. And I was, they were going up and down the country, pulling kids out of school and arresting them, and locking them in a box. And I was one of the fierce advocates from the early on. I did a TED talk on it, and I had Cheltenham on down, Metropolitan Police, the NCA, who I was very close to. I worked with counterterrorism. I did all the cybersecurity. They don't tell you this in the papers, but I was absolutely on the ground with all of that. And I was very connected in that space, and had personal relationships with not just I mean, Boris Johnson was a different kind of personal relationship, but I had very close ties with the head of GCHQ and everybody that within those agencies. They spoke at my events. In fact, my one event, I just have to say this, in 2013, October at BAFTA, 195 BAFTA, it was the first time we ever put law enforcement on with these young hackers. And I wanted to basically bridge this divide, this stigma between these young people that could see patterns and logic flaws in an incredible way that was so different than anything else. And even Boris Johnson struggled to get his head around, like, what do you mean all hackers should go to jail? Like he started that speech when he came to my event. And I turned to him, I said, really? That's what you said? Did you not listen to anything I told you? Get up here. And I pulled up all the hackers. I was like, get up here. And they're all like, this high, standing next to him, looking at him, and he doesn't really understand. Why am I sitting here trying to understand what hacking is? And I said, because this is the backbone of your tech community. Okay. Yes, you have a lot of great innovators and builders and a lot of, but if you alienate these kids, you are removing the most fierce weapon, the most fierce ability to defend your country. You need security. And this is when I met my husband, and we really, I found someone that didn't just have a passion for tech, but knew how to build things in a way and understood it in a way that I have yet to find anybody else who gets what his brain can do. And I say that because I'm not just blowing smoke here when I talk about the BS around Bitcoin. I mean, I've seen it firsthand. My husband was building wallets, supercomputers that were cracking digital wallets. So it took a lot of energy, but it was able to scan and basically help either retrieve lost funds. I mean, there was everybody that was losing money. So we were trying to, bridge out, not just, building Bitcoin mining and rigging it, but we were trying to basically solve the problem of theft and identity and all this kind of nonsense that was happening. It's still going on. And so this is why we don't just build, we break, we take apart, and we understand so that we can make it more secure. And this is essential in my little, basically preamble to giving like the kind of background that I've had in this space, because I've seen it firsthand where you can control, you can create a consensus and control Bitcoin. And it may be decentralized by nature, but the actual mining power, the capabilities are all centralized in these large mining farms. And the reason I mentioned in part one, Trump wanting to bring over the Bitcoin mining to the US, because whatever the hell's been happening in the Three Gorges Dam and every other, Silk Road laundering, I believe that Bitcoin didn't just happen to come into fruition in 2008-9. It was specifically designed to, after the crash, the subprime mortgage crash, with the housing and the equity crisis, it was designed to start exercising people into digital currency. And for that reason, because we know the FBI and all three-letter agents are complicit with child, trafficking, laundering of drugs. They've been in with the cartels. We've known this. This is open, that they wouldn't not use Bitcoin, people. They wouldn't. And what absolutely confirmed it for me was when Russ Ulbricht was arrested with Silk Road, I believe in 2016, because I remember talking to GCHQ back in the UK. I was able to call them on the phone, the number 2 guy who ran it for 26 years, his name was Conrad Prince, and have a deliberate conversation about what the hell Bitcoin really was and who actually made it. And so you expect me to believe, like my kids at Hacker House, the raw, amazing talent that I saw that sometimes went rogue, sometimes a little bit of a train wreck, sometimes broke the law, but absolutely, brilliant minds. Bitcoin was just some kid in a hoodie, and yet you'll adapt that, but you're going to look at these kids and lock them in a box, and the US is going to extradite every single hacker, because they had a hard-on for hackers from 2011 to 14. They were basically arresting everybody and bringing them back to the US. I know this for a fact because I testified for a friend, Laurie Love, in the UK, and basically stood before a judge, and a whole courtroom and said, you do not take this boy. He's a lot of things, but he's not what you are making him out to be. And so you want me to believe that some schmuck in the basement, built Bitcoin, and now we're all adopting it and using it. And it was interesting to see how the narrative of Jamie Dimon and all these big players within the financial, don't touch it, go ahead and buy it, don't touch it, and they're telling everybody, but then behind the scenes, they're hoarding it, using it. I mean, JP Morgan has had how many fines for fraud, misrepresentation of the silver markets. I mean, they have done everything under the book and more. So for us to naively believe that they have introduced this new currency that had all the bells and whistles of being outside the system and not be controlled by the system. This is why when 2017, when we saw that Bitcoin, there was that big rush where it went from that was later. That was 2020, where it went from like 20 grand to 60 grand, right? And it was right around that time that Ripple case was filed. And again, I'm sitting there going, you're going to come after this company that has been in your office, that has been meeting you, that has been trying to be transparent with a name and a face and a real CEO and a real CTO. Yet you're going to let this Bitcoin thing go up and then slaughter the people that are actually, checking off the forums and going and doing all the right, trying to follow the SEC's advice. And, they kept saying we have an open door policy. For who? The black CIA, the black ops behind the CIA? I mean, because that's all that they were serving, and their token friends, SBF, or FT, with the Sam Bankman-Fraud guy and the Ethereum guy, the Vitalik. I mean, again, another oh, please. You want me to believe whatever this kid comes out of nowhere and all of a sudden he's a genius? And no, he's completely controlled, no matter how, because I've seen firsthand what brilliant minds can build. I've seen it. I've seen them be able to get in. And that's just what I kept telling the metropolitan, everybody in security, GCH. I mean, honestly, I was like, we got into a military base. These kids are able to look at CCTV footage with men walking down with big guns. And they're like, Jennifer, that's against the law. And I'm like, is it? Because this is what we can do. Why aren't you guys caring about, what if they can do this, how many other criminals can do this? Why aren't we plugging these back doors? Why aren't we making these kids, using these kids as assets? They keep telling you where all the logic flaws, CNN was owned, this company was owned, but yet they just wanted to lock them in the box. And yet the ones they chose were the ones that were, and then now Bitcoin has taken on this whole shape, this cult, this oh, Bitcoin, Bitcoin solves this. No, it freaking doesn't. Bitcoin is tied directly to Tether. Tether's tied to the US dollar, backed by nothing, made lawful by government decree. This is not a real asset. This is some hegemony, this fake kind of, pump and dump FOMO into something that you think is decentralized because you've never seen anything outside of your SWIFT cartel banking system, so now it automatically is the now we sponsored so many Bitcoin events. I mean, early days, I was at every single my husband did a blockchain. My husband was really the one. I mean, he was giving talks on how to build Bitcoin mining, farming, cooling it down. I mean, no one knew this space better than my husband. And I saw it with my own eyes from the work I was doing. And like I said, the information and conversations I was having. And I think the UK government was a bit scared of me, quite honest, because I was so open about everything. I mean, I just went in there. I entered cybersecurity in 2015. I blew down the frickin' door. I mean, I didn't ask permission. They couldn't stand me, especially the old guys, the old, really stiff suited types, that were like, who is this girl, this American that's here? Why is she at this dinner? There were a lot of, closed security dinners that I was guest, Sir Edmund Burton. And there were so many, Sir Francis, I mean, there were so many people in the UK that had brought me in because they believed in what I was doing and saw where my head was going. So, Lord Jim Knight, he was a labor lord for the UK people that know these names. And the reason being is because I was so passionate about solving this problem of crime, identity, and using laundering, using dirty money like Bitcoin was being used. So if it's so great and outside the system, why does it keep coming back in the system, used in the system for every one of these cases where fraud is happening? And we're allowing this to proliferate without shutting it down. And I think it's because it was controlled from the beginning, that there was absolutely not just one Satoshi Nakamoto. You know, you're going to actually expect me to believe that the United States is going to allow some faceless, you know, like decentralized currency. Yeah, come on. Who is this guy? We need accountability, transparency, like every other company that registers with the SEC, that goes public, all this stuff. And now they're trying to make it out like the ETF is the end all, like this is the greatest thing that happens to Bitcoin. I'm sorry, but when you can short a product, you can control that product. And this is not the system that they think it is. Mm-hmm. Now, I say XRP, and I talk about XRP a lot, not because I believe it's outside the system. It's not the banker's coin. It's not the World Economic Forum's coin. It is the best technology. And the reason is because it solves real problems with real utility. And that application layer that we talked about in the first sequence, the first segment, that bit of code that writes those surveillable parameter, that can be removed at any time. That's just a bunch of creepy creepers trying to take, you know, hail some power whoring on top to keep this technology surveillable. But the reality is it's the best technology for the problem served. Bitcoin doesn't do what XRP does. Bitcoin can't move via satellites and radio waves. And I mean, you have to add a bunch of plugins. And Bitcoin is not going to be the one when the lights go out that you're going to be able to use and even sell, because I think they're going to tax it and regulate it to hell, which is why I think Trump is very interested in taking all the mines, all the operations of this dirty money, bring it to the US and demand accountability. Because the minute they do that, they're going to go for it. The Three Georges Dam is going to go, and they're going to blow off the lead. Now, Ethereum, all the computing power of a Raspberry Pi, please, it's got nothing. The only thing the Ethereum has, and that's funded by the JP Morgan big money types when Ethereum was first launched for their famous Bill Hinman's free pass. He basically, from the SEC, gave this famous speech that basically was one rule for Ripple, one rule for Ethereum. And that's when people talk about the ETHgate scandal. Yes. It goes back to John Hinman. And what this points out is how many of the institutional types jumped on the bandwagon for the ICO of Ethereum because they funded it, they controlled it, they threw and then people go, well, XRP doesn't have the development, the ecosystem that Ethereum has. Well, no, it freaking doesn't, because it doesn't want to be Ethereum. Okay, it's not, Ripple doesn't need to fund a bunch of the little developers. Ripple is on one focus, one track mind. Now, that doesn't mean that the ecosystem is not important, because it absolutely is. And this is why Ripple is now funding small grants and projects and good technology. Do you know I was funded by Ripple? My husband, we are an official Ripple partner. We were funded by Ripple. We'll probably be eventually acquired by Ripple, because the technology my husband built is that good. And like we talked about in the first segment, my head is 100% focused on self-custody and sovereign wallets, because I believe the adoption that's going to take place is all about the sovereign rights back to the individuals to own your own assets. And this is why I think it's so damn important that we make sure that regulation stays on the right side of history and doesn't start to go down the creepy Chinese credit score system. Because again, as we mentioned, Americans are not going to stand for that. We didn't stand for it 10 years ago when they had the technology, and the Brits too. I'm going to say the Brits because we are one and the same. It is a false delusion to believe that we are separate, because we never were separate. So I believe what happened in the cabinet office, and if anything, I trust what comes out of the UK first, because they're faster to get stuff out. So if I can see it in the UK, I know that the US is already, on that. But the UK is smaller, it's easy, it's more lateral, it's easier, it's more centralized in London, so it's easier to find this information. So when I was able to actually go back and speak to these people, within the security community that were hell bent on Bitcoin, and understand what Bitcoin really was. And then this stuff came out with Dana Pina, and if you really knew who created Bitcoin, you would drop it like that. And then the rumors about Three Georges Dam and the mining and the trafficking and the drugs around it, then it starts to make a lot of sense. Now you understand why all these, it's like they demonize it to keep it far enough so you're not interested in it. That doesn't mean they're not. That doesn't mean they're not using it, so, and if it really was anonymous, they wouldn't have been able to track down the wallets and find us, which they do, because it's not finite. I know they say there's a finite supply. Get the hell out of here. You can fork it anytime. Now, of course, that's a big whole thing, but it's not. When you're controlling the mining capability, as the centralization happens, you absolutely control the network. Get the hell out if you think otherwise. I just think it is so ignorant of people to believe that Bitcoin is the answer when it is absolutely nothing but another psyop to lock you into slavery. Because if they don't get you when you sell out, and let's say you make millions and jillions, they'll get you with the regulation and the tax. Excuse me. If they didn't get you to stop you buying in, and you go on and you make your millions, they'll get you on the end. And this is why we keep going back to the importance of self-custody, because people think these exchanges are secure, their money is fine. They think there's somewhere to go when someone hacks into your hard wallet, your Ledger, your Ellie wallet, your Exodus wallet. No, there's nowhere to go. There's no regulatory clarity. You can call the police, they'll write it down. They don't give a shit. Like they're not going to do anything for you. What we need is regulatory to define this space so that we're not using dirty laundering money and excess currency that actually, and this is why it's so important.
All right, that was a spicy one. And so Jennifer just she had the wind in her sails and she was like going for it. And so if there's any Bitcoin fans left who also like this channel, after that, Jennifer went pretty scorched earth about how this clearly came out of Bitcoin came out of the bowels of national security and cybersecurity. And I agree. And what I didn't really go into in that interview is I see this as one of those nested operations where there's a Malachian plan, right? Or better put, there's a Luciferian plan, and they trick the Malachians into doing it. It's the same way the Malachians do Trojan horses, of where if they claim they're doing CEI and DEI to help women and people of color or whatever, and then actually it's to pursue some other agenda. In a similar way, the Malachians thought that they were duping the public into thinking, oh, Bitcoin is a libertarian, like spontaneous thing that came out of nowhere, right? Well, we know it came out of the NSA, and as I often say on this channel, the NSA is broadly Luciferian, right? Just like the CIA is broadly Malachian. So the way I see Bitcoin is I see Bitcoin as a Luciferian Trojan horse inside of a Malachian Trojan horse. And they love to do that because the only way that they could ever get traction back in the day before 2020, in order to pursue their agenda, was to nest their agenda inside the Malachian agenda, right? So what I see is I see that Bitcoin was an alpha test or beta test for the Luciferian quantum financial system, whatever you want to call it, that's going live in 2025, right? The blockchain system. And that in order to get buy-in by the Malachians, they had to claim that it was solving a problem, the big debt problem, the big debt crunch, and you need to switch over to it. And that they were going to create a social credit system, total control for the Malachian bankers. And the Malachian bankers go, okay, let's roll out with the Bitcoin, right? And then the Luciferians assured them, no, this isn't really a Luciferian thing because it has all these Malachian tools within it, which is true, which is what Jennifer just went off on. The flip side of the coin is, again, XRP is another nested operation. The Malachians think it's the keystone to be able to allow all their Malachian CDBCs to be interoperable, right? Whereas what it actually is that eventually the free market itself will cut out the middleman and people will trade directly in XRP or XOM or whatever the token medium is. People will just cut out the CDBCs altogether. And that's where that extreme Malachian control is. And I'm very hopeful, just like Jennifer. And so Yes, that is the end of part one, and hopefully that explanation makes sense. And feel free to put your thoughts in the comments below. I'm open to other interpretations, and hopefully, people are open to dialogue. One of the things that I find unfortunate about discussions with people who are very, very into Bitcoin is Bitcoin has a sort of cult-like following around it, almost a religious fervor. And I understand that what undergirds that fervor is desire to break free from the yoke of slavery, of debt-based money, of usury, all that kind of stuff, right? And so that's very noble, and I totally agree with that, right? And there'll be people who say, oh, no, Ian, you're being duped. XRP is evil. That's what lets the central banks do everything. Bitcoin is actually the big libertarian solution. Everything else is black propaganda, whatever. And it's like, well, that doesn't really solve all the questions that Jennifer brought up, and I haven't really seen those explained away, right? And I understand, I'm going in with eyes open, that XRP is not some super benevolent thing, which Bitcoin people act like Bitcoin is the messiah and it breaks all the chains, and you just don't understand. If you really understood Bitcoin, then you would know that this frees humanity forever, right? I don't see that with XRP, and I certainly don't see that with Bitcoin, right? I see XRP as being a very slick system to where the Luciferians are seizing control of the financial system from the Malachians, and that it will be a new control grid, absolutely, but it will be that lighter touch, technocratic control grid that the Luciferians want to put into place that is much more light touch and therefore more livable than the Malachian mind control top-down slavery model that they want to put in. I do not believe that Bitcoin is some ultra noble thing, and you're free to disagree with me. And if you want to, have whatever reaction to this video, you certainly can. Now, for people who enjoyed it or were intrigued by it, part two, or rather, actually, it's part three. Part three is available on the Patreon, and the link will be in the description below. And part three is called Shadow Wars: The Clone Wars. And it's talking about the backdrop of cloning and mind control, which is a theme that's talked about a lot on this channel. And whether high-level people are mind controlled. Are they clones? Are they body doubles? What are they? What's going on there? Because certainly there's a certain amount of people out there that are just nothing like the people that they used to be. And Jennifer is one of those very interesting people, is insider outsider, right? She had insider view by, she happened to connect with and romantic nature Boris Johnson back when he was mayor of London, which was a stepping stone to becoming prime minister, much like a governor within the United States is a stepping stone to becoming, if it's a big enough state, is a stepping stone to becoming president potentially. And so it's very fascinating, her views on Boris Johnson and what's happening with that. And we talk a bit about the context and the history of all of
The
that.
sooner you realize, but that's not Boris Johnson. I don't care what you say. I know that man, and that's not the same guy. And then not only did he look weird, act weird, talk weird, he's creating policies that he doesn't care anything about. I know for a fact he doesn't care about LGBT and net zero.
And so if you're interested, go ahead and click on the link below and you can join the Patreon. And I hope you enjoyed it. All right, take care. Be well. Bye.